The amazing thing to me, though, is how much good they have done. And CEDAW, even though it has not been ratified by us, and I guess now 7 countries, has done an amazing amount of good work in the countries that have ratified it. And I think that if you all should go on the website of the United Nations on CEDAW and just look at some of the country reports. They're not perfect. They're not reporting every period that they're supposed to be. Sometimes they're late. But it is amazing how much they have done to further the rights of women and to fight violence against women, to fight for the granting of property rights, to deal with subjects of economic opportunity and education. It has helped the women of this world. And I think that we have to do something about ratifying it and to elevate it from the topic of some small issue and think of bigger pictures. Anyway, also, it's not just treaties. We should be doing more legislation that goes beyond treaties. And I was also asked to speak about the International Violence Against Women Act. We passed the first federal legislation recognizing violence against women in the United States. Only the first time was 1994. Just imagine. 1994 was the first time but the Congress recognized this is a major problem. Because again, it was treated as private. It was the whole issue of violence was the house under common law. You talk about Islamic law, under common law, that the house was the castle for a man. And he could do anything in those private spaces. He didn't have to be the king. He could be the peasant. It didn't matter. That's where he ruled. And he could use violence. To overcome that common law at the state level took us most of the 70s. And I think the first laws were passed in the 70s. But now throughout the nation, it has been recognized. Finally, by legislation at the federal level, only in 1994, that you can't beat your wife. You can't. And in same token, in my opinion, child abuse laws started progressing through legislation in our country in the 70s and to this very day. They're still weak because they have artificial statutes of limitations, keeping them too small and need to broaden them. The International Violence Against Women Act is in some ways an outgrowth of our Violence Against Women Act, an extremely important piece of legislation, which right now, as I speak, is being held up by threats of abortion rioters. One of the new phenomena we have in our country is how do you block anything giving rights to women? Just put an abortion rider on it. Or you don't even have to put the rider on it. I mean an amendment for those who are not, don't know what the word. There's too much jargon in this city, so I always try to stop. Anyway, is that you put an amendment on, or you threaten to put an amendment on, somehow dealing with the subject of abortion, and boom, it's gone. You don't even have to put the amendment on anymore. Just threaten to do it. And no one wants to deal with that, so boom, that is gone. So we have to deal with that. It is horrible what is happening. The IVAWA, or the International Violence Against Women Act, should not be controversial. Who could be for violence and who could not? And whatever you do, it has to help us a little bit. But all you got to do now is threaten to put that kind of rider on, an amendment on. And it's tough to get it to move. And we have to, the women's movement is being boxed by that. It's being boxed at the level of CEDAW, it's being boxed at the level of international legislation, and it's being boxed at the level of domestic legislation. Now, I believe, why do these things have trouble? And I spent years and years of my life fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment. As you well know, we do not have an equal rights provision for women in our United States Constitution. A disgrace. All modern constitutions that are written have one. We don't. And I keep saying, why? Why? Who's lobbying? Because I never, for years they tortured us with, it's the bathrooms. You know, if you have an equal rights amendment, you can't have a women's room and then a men's room. I mean, and I knew it wasn't about that. I mean, to have senators on the floor saying, I don't like the bathroom situation, the women are not clean enough. You know, they have that period of their life. It comes once a month. Actually, Sam Erman talked about this. It was in the bathroom situation here. But it wasn't about bathrooms, obviously. Sam Erman was one of the original old Southern senators who blocked it in the Senate for years and before we got it. But what was it about? Who is opposed? And it comes always down to, in my opinion, moneyed interests. These human rights bills and legislation and all that comes right down to it. If you give full rights to half the population, you got to pay them better. You got to treat them better. Somebody can't exploit them. And exploitation always means somebody is making money they wouldn't make if these people, whatever the group is, were treated as equal citizens. And so we've got to stop thinking about the amendments and the words that people say and look at the bottom line, what is at issue? And I think that still what's at issue is things like pay equity, you know, money. If women have full education, who doesn't want someone to be educated? Those people who want to say you don't have that job because you're not educated. And if you, they want to blame you for that, but then keep education scarce so that you will work for exploitative wages. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I think we've got to I'm not an economic determinist, but I see who's really always pushing us down. And in this country, it's the business, it's the moneyed interest. When you come right down to it, those legislators more worried about their they call it conservative. I call it people who want to represent the people at the top are worried about what they're paying those at the bottom. And if you remember, another reservation put on CETA was on pay equity. So if they didn't care about pay equity, why did they put a reservation on it? Why do we have trouble passing right now we're fighting for the Paycheck Fairness Act? Why are we having trouble with that? What is it about? And I think we have to get tougher. And I think we got to stop thinking about private and public at all intertwines. And unless we give more power to women, the needs, and I started with water and food, basic are denied too many. I mean, when you're talking about 1 billion to go to bed hungry and 2 billion don't have clean water, I mean, what kind of humanity is this that we would allow this to happen? So anyway, I think that we as women's rights leaders and as activists have got to get tougher, because when we walk into those small rooms, and I've been very lucky to be a leader of the women's movement in the United States for a long time, we're not speaking for ourselves. We're speaking for those who can't walk in those doors. When we fail, we're going to go home and eat anyway. You know, we have a bed, and we're too comfortable, really. It's one of the things I think that makes us not fight as hard and be as mad as we should be. But you got to keep in your brain, when you represent those who can't speak, those who are suffering the most. And unless we keep those in our brain, you can't even keep moving. Because so much of it, the public discourse in our country has become ludicrous. I mean, it's just like, it's entertainment right now, with some of the nonsense that is being said publicly. But we can't laugh when so many else are forced to cry because of their horrible situation. And I think you see the abuse of women even more clearly on the international level. But when you have also in our country 20% of our children that are hungry, it's right here too. When I say hungry, 20%, they just released new figures, are living in poverty. So we who represent these ideals have got to understand that every time we lose, countless people suffer, and we got to fight harder. Thank you.